This week in Geography, we're going to be continuing on with our unit, Great Places to Live. This unit has been our focus for this semester, and we've been developing our ideas around the key inquiry question, why do people live where they live? And the key terminology we've been using is population distribution. Okay? So we've been looking at how do the things that affect where people live distribute the population around the globe. Story so far. We've looked at how economics distributes population around the globe. Looked at how water quality does, about transport and infrastructure, and how air pollution affects where people live and the livability of the places where they live. Okay, the economics. We've learnt about how some people, the underclasses, cannot choose where they live. They have no choice or freedom. They're controlled by the people who control the money, the capitalists. Then we had a bit of a case study look at the Occupy Wall Street movement, okay? And we learned about how the 99%, the lowest classes, were looking after the higher classes. And then we had a bit of a quote from Nelson Mandela, which is on the board as well, that helped us to have our own human agency to be able to impact on poverty. Then we learned about water quality, basic human need for water, infrastructure in developed countries, and then some of the infrastructure that's being put into underdeveloped countries that's changing population distribution in those countries, and how people live their lives. Okay, we did a case study of Melbourne transport systems, okay, and livability of that city, and how the transport system really improves the livability of that city. And then we learned about air pollution in the last lesson. So in groups of 3, I would like you to list the impact of air pollution on livability in China. Okay, today's lesson, the main concept we're going to be referring to and we're going to be understanding and inquiring into is that social connection equals livability. Okay, so social connection can be broadly defined as a connection between ourselves and others. Okay, we know that it's essential throughout our lives. Okay, a baby needs as much social connection with its mother as elderly citizens need as much social connection with each other through companionship. Okay, we also know that there are some people who are more socially connected than others. Okay, we might find out some of the reasons why that is in this lesson. Okay, to start this topic, I would like you to just have a quick reflection on your own social connections. What does social connectedness mean to you? What are the critical social connections in your life? And how important are social connections to your own ability to live? Okay? You've got about 3 minutes, so 1 minute per question, okay, to answer that. Some of the first rock paintings and the first forms of art and evidence of our social connectedness to each other are in Australia, in the Aboriginal rock painting caves in Northern Territory. And like some animals, like dolphins and gorillas, we learn social connectedness through fun and through play, and then we translated it into socially connecting over important issues that are relevant to all people, okay, and improve our livability by talking about these issues, such as in To Kill a Mockingbird, which is important for understanding races. Okay, some social connections that might matter in your life. Okay, so family is the obvious important one. Today's day and age, the internet's very important because of globalisation. Our world is shrinking. We need to be able to communicate over longer distances because things that happen in those longer distances affect our lives. Okay, some barriers to social connection. Poor health, poor education, poor transport, poor social skills, overuse of drugs and alcohol, and racism and discrimination. Okay? I want you to write down 3 reasons why these concepts are barriers. Come up with 3 more barriers of your own. Have about 10 minutes to do that by yourselves in your exercise books. Some barriers for Aboriginal Australians. Our key artefacts that we're going to be used to be looking at Aboriginal Australians is this poster here. We're going to be using this poster for the rest of the lessons as you inquire into some of the barriers for Aboriginal Australians, okay? This poster was taken from around the time of the 1967 referendum. Okay, this referendum gave citizenship rights and allowed Aboriginal people to vote, to be more socially connected in Australian society. Okay? Allegedly, and symbolically, this has improved the livability for Aboriginal Australians. For today's lesson task, we need to be reflecting on this artefact of the poster. And in groups of 4, I want you to answer the following questions in a Word document. 150 words to be spent per question. What is the significance of the poster artefact on the previous slide? Okay? What changes to Aboriginal population distribution have occurred since the 1967 referendum? What damage has racism had on social connectedness for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people? And has the overcoming of certain racial barriers for Aboriginal social connectedness improved their livability? Why and why not? Okay? Now you should also all have that lesson task sheet in front of you. And so refer to that when you're doing the task. When we're answering the questions, we need to provide some evidence to support our answers. And when we do this, we need to use both primary and secondary sources. Okay? We've talked a little bit about primary and secondary sources in previous lessons, so you should all know what those are. Okay? And our answers should be supported by using a range of data forms, including maps, graphs, or data tables, okay? Because this really helps support and builds up the evidence for how we've answered our inquiry questions. Okay? We've got about half an hour left in the lesson. I'm going to give you about 25 minutes to finish that off, and then I'll bring you back, and we'll just have a bit of a reflection on the lesson. Today's lesson is we're going to reflect on how important are social connections to livability, okay? And we've just got our slide here, we've got 2 pictures. One is taken of kids in Bhutan, and the other one is a mansion in America. Now Bhutan, unlike most developed countries, actually measures its growth through the scale of gross domestic happiness rather than gross domestic product. Okay? Bhutan measures things like how socially connected are people, and presents policies that are aimed at developing the happiness and social connectedness of people rather than their economic growth. Okay? And then in America, where there is a big focus on gross domestic product and a big focus on building up one's status through economic growth and stuff like that. So our reflection question today is, how important are social connections to livability? When you're reflecting on that question, I'd like you to reflect on it in terms of how important is it in relation to our economic connections and our ability to grow economically. Okay? So I'll give you about 3 minutes to answer that question. I just need a paragraph in your exercise books. Thanks. And then we'll come back and that should nearly finish us off. Next week, we're going to be looking at livability, but through the lens of culture. So we're going to be exploring livability through the lens of culture and looking at how culture, like social connectedness, might affect population distribution. Okay? We're going to look at how culture plays a key part in building social connections and also how social connections develop cultures. And then we're going to do a case study on how a loss of social connection in Aboriginal communities has diminished their culture. Okay? So we'll see you next week, guys.